Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Ricky O here with the HWO, the Hockey World Order. And this morning, I'm lucky enough to have Big Ben come back for round two. I guess I didn't upset him too much or say anything that stupid that he actually got up out of bed and came back on again. But Ben, good morning and welcome back.
Hey, great to be here, Ricky.
Ben, last time, we had a really good hour and 15-minute chat, and a lot of people responded well to it. I mean, it was definitely my most watched show ever, and I see you're putting up 20, 30,000 likes for Chris's show, and I saw you did Mr. Cote's show over there. What's it been like? I mean, like I said when we interviewed you, you weren't around the public spotlight for a long time, and Behn Wilson's back. Have you gotten a lot of positive reaction? A lot of people reaching out since you started doing these interviews?
Yeah, it's I'm not on Facebook or anything like that, and I keep a low profile. And I think I said last time with when Scoop wrote his book about me, facing Behn Wilson, the part that touched me the most was hearing all the other guys' stories and memorializing them, and then you realize there's a lot of great stories, and that you don't get to share. So I'm glad to be part of the sharing process, and it also gets me to revisit all the stories that I haven't thought about for a long time.
It was funny. I had so many ex NHL players reach out to me, and you know, I believe we share a mutual friend in Chris Kostopoulos, and Chris just texted me right after he watched the interview, and he was like, "That was one big bad mother, you know what?" And he said his brother was just as tough. So it was just funny. So many people hadn't seen you in so long. One of the questions I like to ask people is, and it's kind of, it's kind of a weird question, but if Behn Wilson walks into a bar and there's 100 dudes in there that are ready to kick Behn Wilson's ass, who are the three guys you bring inside with you from your playing career? Who are the three guys that you would trust to walk in and you guys would be able to take this down?
Wow, that's a crazy question. That's a sideways question. Top of my list, I'd have to pick Paul Holmgren. Um, um, catching me on the spot. If you had more time to think about it, there's a big list. There's a lot of lists. I bring Willie Platt in, Beck, Clark, Gillies, Glenn Cochran. Um, uh, Tough as heck, and he wouldn't leave to save himself. So there's a lot of guys. Mel Bridgman. There's some tough guys. The more I think about it, in fact, no wonder I retired what I did because they're tough guys.
That was a pretty impressive list. You just named Beck, Holmgren, and Gillies right off the bat. I mean, and you. I don't. Yeah, I think you guys would fare pretty well on that if that ever took place. Um, a lot of people also reached out and asked me to ask you about the Babbage fight. They wanted to know if that was revenge for the Watson hit or if that was just something that was spur of the moment. But a lot of Flyer fans reached out to me and were like, Ben killed him because he hit Mr. Watson or he took a run at Watson. Do you remember how that went down?
Yeah, at the time it's different. Now I feel kind of bad. First of all, Wayne Babbage was a fabulous player. He was drafted my year. I was sixth. He was maybe third or something like that. But he was a great player. He could skate, he could shoot, he could handle the puck, and he was pretty tough. And in that year, I was my fifth year with the Flyers. Um, Bob McCammon decided my best position was to sit on the bench. And I finally got out to play. There was a TV timeout, and Mark Howe is a good friend of mine. Loved him, great guy. I said, Mark, just listen to this. So, like I usually do in between whistles, I talk to the other team, and God knows what I say, but I say, I have my mouth guard in. I don't know what I'm saying. They don't know what I'm saying. I'm throwing out some of my best words, and they're trying to make a sentence out of it. And um, I thought I was having fun. Mark was laughing, and I thought I had, if he gets agitated, worried about me, he's not playing hockey. Anyway, the puck drops, and the puck goes through. From what I remember, the puck goes through my, but 15 seconds later, the puck goes through my skates, and he comes. And next thing is, he puts a stick between my legs, jams me, drops his gloves, and he's fighting. So, and um, what I realized was all my teasing and kidding and funning around, and having fun with Mark Howe. Um, Wayne actually took that pretty seriously, and he thought there was something big going on. And I feel bad about it. Wayne was, I thought, a very good fighter. He knew how to fight. He was a good fighter, and he wasn't a heavyweight. And he shouldn't have fought me. And but I was surprised at how good a fighter he was. But like my theory of fighting is, you start off with receive zero punches, and if you can get in one, that's good. If you can get in two, it's good. But you just make sure you don't get hit. And Wayne tried to go toe to toe with me. I had a good grip on him. He didn't hit me, and ended up it ended up badly for him. I couldn't believe he was standing up, and at the end, and I feel bad because I think it hurt the rest of his career. I don't know, and he
Well, he
didn't
definitely
deserve
did not
that.
drop the gloves much after that. Probably maybe a handful of times for the rest of his life.
Yeah, um, and the other part I remember is there's not too much. There's a lot of guys that might hit you and hack you and yell at you and after the whistle when the refs are in there, but very seldom do you get like a real mismatch. And um, I just think that. And my theory is if you're too good of a player, you never really learn how to fight enough. And he was a fabulous player, and um, he just shouldn't have gotten a fight, and it went badly. I think Keith Allen, our general manager of the Flyers, brought me into his office, and I was wondering, and they said he got a call, and they thought he broke his nose, and but good news, it wasn't his nose; it was his jaw and his cheekbone. And and it was funny at the time. It's a little funny now, but the real thing is, you just can't get hit like that. You
Right.
just can't get hit like that. It can't be all offense because you're going to win, and that was tough for him.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, and I didn't get around to asking you the first time around, was the influx of fighters, and we're not going to name names. Most guys who follow this hobby pretty much know who we're talking about. But the influx of fighters who readily started to use steroids. I know it started to creep in the mid to late 80s. Was there any time where you guys started to realize these guys were coming in a little gassed up, the size difference, the muscle mass on guys? Was there a time you looked in a locker room and was like, Jesus Christ, this guy's on something here? Or
Um, Certainly, the tough part about fighting is you never know when the fight's going to happen. It could be at the end of your shift when you're tired. It could be end of the game when you're tired. It could start off with them cross-checking from behind. So you just don't know. And with the steroids, I didn't know. But more and more teams had guys that didn't play much. So when they got in a fight, they're fresh as a daisy, and they haven't played a whole game, and that was always the big problem. That was always the big problem. And then what I found is, or I believed is a lot of these guys, instead of if you're big and strong, maybe you should work on your speed and skating. And the big strong guys were now um, just working on the weights and getting bigger and stronger. And how much of that was steroids or the whole thing? But it's just sort of it's pretty hard to compete when you're trying to skate out there when you're tired after games, and you've got to keep your skills up, and your competition is just lifting weights, maybe doing steroids. It makes it tougher. But I've never looked at one guy, at least when I played, and I said, He's doing steroids. They probably were. I didn't know anyone that did illegal drugs, and looking back, just laws of averages. Somehow it did happen, but I wasn't part of that. It's just tougher to the guys are getting bigger and lifting more weights and playing less and being fresh as daisies.
What's crazy about that subject is the actual banning of them took place in the 90s. They were legal for a while. And what made me ask that question was, and I swore I'm going to find this interview before I die, but there was a Buffalo Sabre who did an interview between periods, and they asked him about his off-season training, and he said, I found this wonder drug. It's perfectly legal. It's a supplement called testosterone, and it's increased my ability to lift weights and made me bigger and stronger. And I go back in my head and say to myself, wow, at the time, the year he said it, it was legal, and then they became illegal. But this was one of the people who, what I call, became a designated fighter. And I think you just touched on that a little bit when the NHL started to change. If you look back, Nick Fatiou took a regular shift, had one of the best wrist shots I've ever seen, could skate. Behn Wilson's an all-star, putting up huge numbers. Um, Guys played hockey and fights took place. At one point, the NHL became a game where guys played hockey and we had robots sitting on the bench that just came out to designate and fight. That scripted fight started to take place. You never took part in that. I went back and I've watched your career over and over. I've watched Wendell Clark. I've watched Willie Plett, who, Willie, call me back. I've called him 10 times since our interview. I'm dying to get him on. He hasn't called me back. You guys were all spur of the moment, team oriented, fight before the team style fighters. Did you notice that creeping in of what I call the designated fighter and towards the end of your era?
Well, I kind of look at the development wasn't like linear; it's more like rock, scissors, paper. When the Broad Street Bullies, the Flyers Broad Street Bullies folks came out, and David Schultz didn't play that much, but he was a fighter. He was the first of the fighters, and he fought guys. Quite frankly, a lot of them couldn't fight, and teams got tired of getting beaten up. So guys, I think that teams brought in as many big tough players that could play as they could. But the bigger you are, the slower you are, type of thing, and all that. So they did what they can, and then there's guys that sat on the bench. So and like you're saying, that were fresh and all that. So the real pains in the asses were the Willie Pletts, Terry O'Reilly, because they're out there all the time. They're out there all the time, um, and more and more. Then there's guys that sat on the bench, and if someone got ran over, they went out for retaliation. And then I've seen a few games after I retired, and then it became these guys. It seemed to me, and I don't know this. Some of these guys, they didn't even play one second of playing time. Something happened; they'd go on the ice before the puck dropped. They're in a fight. And but it's sort of like some guys like Paul Holmgren were better at tough and running over guys, and some guys just fought, and some guys played, and it's a real mismatch. But eventually, like you said, there's just guys that were just tough and could fight, and the idea is don't keep them on the ice very long. Make sure they get in the fight nice and early, and that was tough. And if there was drugs, and I wasn't part of and didn't know anyone in that drug era, but that only made it more problematic if you ask me.
Right. I
I
can't believe
hate,
it.
and if there were guys that I played against that were doing the steroids, I don't even want the list because it'd make me sick.
Only, I can't believe it took us this long to get to this gentleman. What are your opinions on Bob Probert as a hockey player and Bob's career? How tough was Bob Probert?
Ah, fabulous question. Um, Bob Probert, I thought was a good player. He was a good, strong player. You've either got to play him and cover him, or he's going to score. So and so I put him in the the realms of like Willie Plett. Willie Plett's on the ice. If you decide you're not going to play him hard, he's scoring. And while they're both on the ice, they give guys like Yzerman a lot of space because they're on the ice. And um, I don't know if I said this, but when I saw Probert fight, and you see the videos and all that sort of stuff, and he's killing guys, I really thought as I'm getting older, I said, one day I'm not going to be able to summon up the rage, and it's going to be against Probert, and Probert's probably the guy that's going to wipe me out. And I thought that he was that good of a fighter. I thought he fought a lot like me, and and he was tough, and he had some good years. I read his book, which was very troubling, very sad, and on one hand, all the comments and people said everyone loved him. Everyone loved him, and he had, for lack of a better word, some demons running in him that got him sideways. But he was tough as hell, and a good player, and you could always put him on the ice.
Yeah.
So that's a huge value add.
Bob Probert, like you said, was just a dangerous hockey player to, go out there. I think the line was him, Yzerman, and Gallant at one time. So you had two giant monsters on either side of Steve who opened up the ice, and then Bob had the front net presence that people I don't think realize today. These young kids look at Bob and they're like, oh, he fought a lot. Bob Probert could score. Bob was an all-star. Bob was an excellent hockey player. So
Absolutely.
that was great.
And and
Go,
and
go
he,
ahead.
they say, oh, he can only fight. He gave him being on the bench gave his team a lot of room. Him being on the ice with Yzerman helped out Yzerman. And the thing that you hope on that is that he can't play with Yzerman. So Yzerman has room but can't do as much. But Bob could play. Bob could score. He was incredible. He tough in front of the net, but he was a pain in the ass in front of the net. But also in front of the net, he can score. He was great. He was great.
Yeah. Who would ever thought him and Ty Domi would end up being best friends? You mentioned a hockey book. Probert's book was awesome. I have probably 150 to 200 books, mostly generated around yourself and people who go out and buy the book. I'm going to put the link up here on Amazon again. But one of the best books I ever read, and I'm just wondering, I'm spitballing here. I was wondering if you ever got a chance to read it. Did you ever read John Cordic's book?
No, I didn't, but I'm going to write this down
It's
right now.
probably the most hard to read book I've ever read when it comes to what he faced and the adversity he faced of having to become an NHL enforcer. The shame his family gave him for his father was absolutely mortified by him. The relationship was so strained because his father said, we didn't pay for you to become a hockey player and go through all of what we did for you to sit out there and have one shift a game, and how it led to a lot of his mental trauma and alcoholism. And it's really a sad book, but if you get your hands on it, it's one of the best books I've ever read. Um, Question that somebody sent in, which I thought was an amazing question. They're opening up an Enforcer Hall of Fame. You're obviously a first class. You're getting inducted. Which sweater do you wear in? Do you wear a Blackhawk sweater or a Flyer sweater if you're inducted into the NHL Tough Guy Hall of Fame?
Wow, that's the question that gets me hated by half the fans out there. Um, I would say this. I would say this that I feel like there were. I had two very different careers. The first part of my career was extremely violent. They didn't call penalties. Guys are in front of the net. The whistle blows. You can cross check them as hard as you want, and from behind, 3 seconds later, it was tough. And the second half of my career, when I went to Chicago, they changed a lot of the rules, and they took out a lot of violence. Um, so certainly most of the tough stuff, I think, happened with the Flyers, and the game had changed, and the game had changed enough that um, I read in the paper there's guys like 25 years old, and they're saying, is he too old to play? And the truth is, he's not too old to play. They just changed all the rules, and his game isn't so viable anymore. And the flip side is there were some great players at the beginning of my career, but couldn't really make the team because they couldn't take the beatings.
Right.
So the rules created careers and ended careers, and then it flip flopped, and you really had to make that transition.
That's an amazing point. I've never thought about what you just said about somebody in that era being so talented but not tough enough to take that daily beating. That's a phenomenal point because if you really go back and watch hockey back in that day, one, Matt Rempe would still be playing and not thrown out of every single game that the poor kid throws a check in. I don't know if you're up on modern hockey and know who Matt Rempe is. Matt Rempe's a New York Ranger. He's played 22 games. He's been ejected out of four of them for throwing hits. He's 6'9" on skates. He looks like Big Bird. Um, his arms could probably reach 12 feet wide. Every time he throws a check, he's lanky. He's made contact, and they just continually throw this kid out of games. He's never going to make an NHL career out of himself. He's been targeted by Gary Butthole and his Nazis in the front office up there that just they're trying to take every source of physicality out of hockey. But that was an amazing point you just made about skill and toughness back in the day. And I remember a few players back in the day that came up, and the term used to be flash in the pan. He'd come up, he was a flash in the pan. And then if you think about it, it was probably mentally trying. And we talked, and a lot of people mentioned stuff like the Philly flu, how people all of a sudden didn't feel well when they were going into the spectrum, or they, suddenly got sick before the game. And that must have been a huge part. Intimidation was such a huge part of hockey, and people underestimate that today. One question I wanted to ask you myself was playing in Chicago Stadium. It's legendary. It's probably my biggest regret is that I never got to see a game there live. What was the atmosphere like there? Because we discussed the spectrum at length about the crowd and the building shape and being up and down, but how loud was Chicago Stadium and how pumped up did you guys get playing there?
The with your previous comment about the intimidation and tying to this, in every sport, every team does better at home. There's no question that having 20,000 fans screaming and things like that, it helps. I don't know how and all that sort of stuff. You wouldn't think it does, but it certainly does. And then you have the Chicago Stadium, the old stadium. The rink was a little smaller. The corners are a little smaller, and the fans were right on top of you. They're not laid back. They're not sloped away. You felt like the fans are right part of the game, and they were loud, and it was a huge help. It was a huge help, and that momentum that you guys, when we score a goal, the stadium's so loud. It just gives you that extra jump of adrenaline, and it also is pretty discouraging to the other team. And they feel that they're fighting, 20,000 and 22 people at the same time. So it was an amazing stadium to play at, and I really thought, especially the old stadiums, they're a leg up. They're a leg up, and they were a leg up. I don't know exactly why they all changed, maybe more seating and all that. And I'm sure there's reasons, that beyond my pay grade. But those stadiums were a plus one. They were a leg up for every game you played.
So leg up is an interesting comment because I have a question. You got anybody going down those stairs pretty hard in Chicago Stadium? Anybody take a good fall in front of you or miss a step on those things? Because that was the most amazing thing to watch as a kid, watching the period end and those guys go down those stairs. Who was going down sideways? Who was holding on for dear life?
um, it's funny you mentioned that. Uh, uh, I hated going up and down the stairs on skates. Not difficult, just a little awkward, and you have to do it. But um, the the funny thing is in the Scoops book that he wrote about me. He wrote a story about Kenny Rumchuk, and Kenny Rumchuk was he's 19. I'm probably 27, 8, 29, and he's my roommate, and he's a really nice guy, and quiet guy. And after practice one day at the stadium, we're out there doing a few extra drills, some of us, and I finally go off. And those stairs are almost right behind the goal net, just slightly to the side. So at the end of practice, now you got to walk down the stairs, and it's annoying. And I'm going off the ice. The gates, the doors open, and I got like one step on terra firma and one on the ice. And Kenny takes a slap shot, misses the net, and smokes me right in the ankle. And unfortunately for me, Kenny Yaremchuk had a great slap shot, and he smoked me right in the ankle. I said, "Holy shit!" And so, yeah, I could have fallen down the stairs. I could have been the one guy that you're talking about. But actually, what happened was there's a funny story. I'm so bad. I was so bad. I didn't know what to do, and I go up to him, and I don't know if I'm going to beat him up, and he's looking at me, and I like Ken. He's a great guy, and I'm so bad at him, and I didn't know what to do, and I'm going to punch him in the face. I'm going to do something, and the, by the grace of God, the only thing I could come up with is I grabbed a stick, and I grabbed the stick and threw it over the boards and glass, so he didn't have a stick anymore, and I went off the ice. But no, I didn't fall down. No one falls down, and. But imagine having, and I got their theory. I got the theory. They can have all the dress rooms down there below or whatever, just annoying to us.
One last question about Chicago Stadium. I know when they went to tear it down, they found hidden rooms. One of the rooms were cases and cases of Prohibition whiskey that were found in there. Any legendary stories about that building? Any hidden rooms that you guys found, or any stories about the old mob days where stuff like just turned up in Chicago Stadium?
You know what? It's funny. During the season, you're busy, you're tired, you're hurt, you're trying to go. You walk in, and the stadium, the one route you take to get the fastest route to get to the dressing room. When you leave, you do the same thing. So you never get to see anything about the stadium. And if I walked in the upper things, I'm completely lost. But the funniest story just about the stadium, when you walked in, they had a huge, like all the stadiums, a huge cleaning crew for after the game. So the next day you come in, and they had this guy, Spider, and Spider was he's my guess is we're young kids, but he's well into his 70s, and he had he weighed about 100 pounds, and he had missing a lot of his front teeth. And usually we come in at 9 in the morning. He's pretty loaded, and he'd come, but he's always happy. He'd always talking to us, and he was great. He would come down to our dressing room now and then, and he'd talk to us, and he'd yell at all of us, Wilson, you're no good. I'd trade your white ass, and I'd get you out of here. No, and then I say, you're not doing nothing. You haven't hit anyone. He'd go, and we're all dying in laughter. And Spider is sort of like one of those characters. I thought that. They don't make him anymore. They just
Yeah,
don't make him anymore. But he was certainly always great for us. And during a long season, when you're tired and hurt and sick and all that stuff, he gave you a few laughs along the way, and I remember to this day.
that's funny. One question I wanted to ask you is about the Flyers, and I want to know if they ever tried to take you on a snipe hunt.
the you know you I was 19. You get to training camp, and as I describe it, my world up until then is you learn to do two things: skate and skate harder. And you get to training camp, and like I think I said last thing, all of a sudden you're sitting in a dressing room with Bobby Clark, and I had heard his name only because he'd already won three most valuable player awards, and Bernie Pront, and all these guys were in there, and you're just a deer in headlights, and you don't know how the world works. You're actually going out to restaurants and stuff like that, and it's just a whole new world, and you're just trying to follow and keep it up and hang in the best you can, and not look like too much of a goof. And then they started talking. Moose DuPont started talking to me about the snipe hunting, and we're going to go. And Jimmy Watson, we're going to go. And we're organizing the thing. And how do you know any different? And this is my first training camp. Um, I just want to play hockey, and then I want to rest. I'd hate to be out snipe hunting, roll my ankle, and not make the team. I don't want to be. I don't want to. Oh, we got lost. We had to walk 20 miles, and I'm too tired to don't make the team. I don't want any part of this. But they're all there, and they're encouraging me. We're going snipe hunting, and the whole plan is coming out. And I don't know what happened, if I overheard some guys talking or whatever, but they had me going on the snipe hunting for several days, and then I finally caught on. So the great part about that is they had me hook, line, and sinker. But so the next year, there's only one thing you can do, and that is talk to the next guys, and that's Brian Prop, and talk to him about going snipe hunting. But I think Brian was way smarter than me, and he caught on way quicker. But it was a fun thing to do every year. It
That's
was
pretty
it
funny.
was it was a great planning.
If you guys don't know what we're talking about, go look it up because it's such a funny story. The Flyers used to take rookies and tell them there was a bird called a snipe, take them out into the middle of the field and have them go out and try to trace up kind of like what you do with quail and use the rookies kind of like for less of a better term, like a golden retriever, right, Ben? Just go out there and
Yeah,
start stirring up and get these things to fly so they could shoot them. So rookie hazing. I know one of the first times I ever saw hazing was Ron Duguay's head, which Ron tells the story was that he was basically tied down by Nick Fatiu, Ron Greshner, Walter Kachuk to a training table, um, nuts put into a rubber band and tied down to a table straight down, head shaved, entire body shaved with dull razors, no shaving cream. Today they'd be in jail with the little sissy fags that fucking play today. They would be locked up. But do you have any good hazing stories?
you know what? I haven't thought of this in a million years. So yeah, you make the junior team and you get hazed, and they don't cut all your hair off. They cut off enough that you really have to cut it off, and all that sort of stuff. So when I went to I was playing in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and they decided the guys started to haze me. And so there's a few of them. So they're in a haze me, and there's like this black tar they put on the toe caps of skates. So they decided, they saw it out there with the brush. They thought it'd be funny if they put some of this black tar on my, what. And it turned out that the stinging, the pain from the black tar, had me doubled over, and I spent about 4 to 5 hours in the shower because with soap you can't get it off, and the pain was incredible. I should have just gone to the hospital. So they thought that was a funny hazing story. So then I turned pro with the Flyers, and again they cut your hair off to make you look like an idiot, and and all that, and they're laughing about it as good. And then Pelly Lindbergh came to the team, and by that time, the hazing was getting watered down. It more good fun rather than um,
Mean spirited.
mean spirited. It was good fun. So he cut his hair a little bit, and that's about it. And then the next game, he goes out and he has a horrible game, and and I didn't even cut his hair. I was just there, and so he has a horrible game. I felt like we lose, like, they put 7 goals in on him, and it was just a horrible game. So a few days later, I get called into the general manager's office, Keith Allen, and he said, "What the hell are you doing? Um, hazing him." And on one hand, you want to say, number one, you say everyone gets hazed that I know. It's sort of like a team thing, and I think it's actually a pretty good thing. Second of all, he didn't get beat up or hurt or anything like that. I've had a whole lot worse. And and the next thing is I didn't do it. But how can I tell Keith Allen I didn't do it? Because he's not going to believe me, because he assumes that that's the one that I did. And then the funniest was Tim Kerr joins the team, and Tim was the closest to Superman I've ever seen. He was so big and strong, And so everyone's, oh, Ben, we got to get together. We got to hold him down. And Timmy Kerr was there threatening everyone. You do not touch my hair. You don't. And he's fighting hard. And he says, I'm going to come back. You don't touch my hair. And I'll tell you what, there was no hazing of Tim. They got him down on his back, but everyone was going to let someone else jump in and do the dirty work and hold on tight. So I thought that was funny. But Tim was that strong and powerful.
Tim Kerr is one of the most underestimated goal scorers of all time, I believe. That guy just stood 3 feet out in front, and you couldn't stop him. Like you said, he was just a bull.
Um, Absolutely right. I played against him, and probably the only guy I felt that, by the time you hold and grab and cheat and grab a stick and that, should be able to tie up anyone. He's probably the only guy I felt in front of the net. I'm not in control. And I was speaking with Tim a few months ago, and I told him a funny story about Timmy is he was big and powerful, and his first year, we're in Montreal, and I think the guy's name was Baker, a defenseman. And I don't know, I started on Timmy. Baker's pushing you around. Baker's all over you. Baker's running you. You're looking bad. You won't be on the team. Baker's embarrassing you. And I just kept it up, and God knows why I said it. There was no thought or plan. And somewhere, I have to watch it. Next thing is Tim's in a fight with Baker, and he just wipes Baker out. Just wipes Baker. And I watched him fight. For a guy that doesn't fight, I watched him. And you saw the power, and he's a lefty. And what I ended up telling Tim was, of all the guys that I fought, and I made sure I got a good grip, or the best grip I could up front. So never really, other than the one shot by Willie Platt, I never really got hit hard. I looked hard, but never did. And that was my strategy. But I had no defense against a lefty, because you can't grab the
Yeah,
arm.
you mentioned that in the first time that your
And
strategy versus
so
the lefty
so
wasn't
Terry
great.
O'Reilly was a major pain in the ass for me. But I think that, and I told him, the one guy I think that could have just wiped me out would be Tim Kerr. If he fought me, he was a lefty. He was so powerful and strong, and I didn't have a defense. I think he could have wiped me out. So, and Tim's a very good friend of mine, and we just laughed. But he was that big, he was that strong, and in front of the net, you couldn't tie him up. And it's not like he's just in front of the net. Oh, in front of the net, whack puck. You give him the puck in front of the net, and he puts it in. He puts it in the corners. He knew what he was doing. He was amazing.
It was Bill Baker, November 22nd, 1980. Bill had just come off the Olympic team. I had to figure out who that was because you were saying that Baker on the Canadians, but I know Baker uh, ended up with the Rangers for a little while too.
Okay.
Um, but that was also a shame. We got, of course, in Ranger lore, we get every single guy who's on his last leg and collected an NHL paycheck, and that was like Phil Esposito, Ken Hodge, Marcel Dion, Guy Lafleur. We got every superstar there was, but when there was nothing left to him. We also got Tim Kerr for a season when Tim was, a little bit past his prime. And I remember one fight Tim Kerr had was against Mark Hardy, and he just busted up Mark Hardy. And like you said, he was left-handed and was dangerous. And that's when I was like, wow, Tim Kerr can throw down. Um, what's a superstition that Behn Wilson had, and what was the funniest superstition somebody might have had in your locker room where you were just shaking your head going, what is wrong with this guy?
Oh, geez. Um, my superstition was doing anything not to be superstitious, to the extent that it was a superstition. But so I first turned pro. Jimmy Watson's my roommate and my defense partner, and Jimmy Watson is just a fabulous guy. He's happy every day. He's positive every day. He plays great every game. He never makes a mistake. He's just great. But he used to line up his sticks on the floor before the game and line them up and get them all lined up just right, turned the right way, the same tape job or whatever. And that was important to him. So I don't know how long, maybe my second year or whatever, I came up with the idea, when he goes to the bathroom, I come back and I have one stick crossed over the other. And then he straightens it out, right? So the next time it happens, now he's looking around. He's trying to figure out what happened because someone could have kicked it or whatever. But after a few times, now he's serious because he told me, you don't do this. And so he was always funny. And I guess for me, my superstition, because you just never know. It's not a superstition. I put Vaseline on my face before every period. Um, And so, 10 years pros, times 3 periods, times plus exhibition games, put Vaseline on because you just don't know what's going to happen. And maybe that's not a superstition, but maybe that's just in fact, it's not a superstition. That's a survival skill because you just never know what's happening.
So we learned a couple things today about Behn Wilson. One, Behn Wilson got blamed for every hazing incident on the Flyers when he didn't do anything wrong. Two, he wasn't dumb enough to go out and snipe hunt. And three, he probably has the softest skin in the NHL since retirement. So it's not a bad thing, Ben. I wanted to ask you. It's funny, because I remember I didn't know, guys did stuff like that. Obviously, it's a boxing thing for punches to glance off or whatever. But I remember Rudy Poshek as a Ranger. He'd come out and it almost looked like he had burn gel on his face in between periods. He'd have so much of it gooped on. Um, I also read some stories about and talked to a good friend of mine is Kevin Killer Kaminsky, and great guy, always hooks me up with interviews and numbers and stuff. But Kevin told me a story once about players taking the screws on the front of the helmets, the old Cooper helmets, where it had the screws right on the forehead, and unscrewing them a little bit and knocking the edge of the screw off, so that if you punched their helmet, you were busting up your hands. Um,
Jesus.
any weird stuff like that you remember guys trying to take advantage or something like that where it was just outright dangerous, but it wasn't really discussed?
I never heard about that, and that sounds creepy. That sounds very creepy. Um, I would say that, thinking back, I turned pro in '78. That was the last year you didn't have to wear a helmet. And all I had to do was sign the release. But my thought was wear a helmet and make sure it's nice and tight. So if someone gets you a good punch, they get the helmet first punch, and then they got to get a second punch. But you get rid of the first one. Um, um, and that was my big theory. Conversely, you used to fight a lot of guys the first few years that weren't wearing helmets, and that was a huge help. That was a huge help. You don't have to worry about it because in the middle of a fight you don't know what's going on and you don't feel anything, and you get to the penalty box and then you're wondering, if you got hit, if you're cut in your face or whatever, and then finally you look down at your hands and your hands are all mangled up, and and then you find out if you hit a helmet or not. And that was awful because the cutting the hands was bad because um, you go to practice the next day, your hand's swollen, there's a cut there, and they put some gauze on and stuff, and putting your hand in the glove was just painful.
Right.
Waiting, you get on the ice a half an hour before practice, and then you wait to the last second to put your hand in your glove. And by the time practice is over, it's all blooded up. But the bad part was in a game, if you put tape and gauze on your hand and you got in a fight, you're ejected.
Right.
So in a game, you couldn't do it. And thinking about the glove, you get sweat in it every day. And God knows what mold and bacteria and things they haven't identified are in there. So then if you got a cut on your thing because you ripped it open, every other day when you play the game for sure, plus all the infection that in there, the cuts lasted months. And they're infected and they're sore and you're washing them and putting neosporin on or whatever, but they just lasted. Oh, then you're in another fight and there's more and it starts all over. So it was miserable with the hand.
One question I always wanted to ask athletes that played in the 70s, 80s, and even touching into the 90s. You go into a NHL locker room now, and there's 10 pairs of gloves, there's 5 helmets. I watched the San Jose Shark game yesterday. Askarov, the goalie, gets hit in the mask. His mask breaks. They whip out another, $4,000 mask. They have 3 of them waiting with $10,000 paint jobs on. What was it like back in the day? Was equipment as readily? Because I know reading Don Cherry's book, another great book, He talks about his first training camp. There was just a pile of used equipment that was from the Stars from the years before, and you'd have to go in and scrounge up shoulder pads or new elbow pads and try to get better. What was it like back in the day as far as readily available? Was everything by the time you got to the league, was the equipment room stocked? Was there contracts with, suppliers, or was it really still a little bit on the let's spare that expense type, scenario?
I think now that you mention it, that's a pretty interesting thing. I think we were in the transition that they try to find equipment that's there. And if you didn't like it, they say, well, maybe use this, and say, well, we'll have to see if we can order it or whatever. And looking back, some of the equipment uh, you liked, and some of it didn't, but that's the way it was. Certainly, and I don't blame the team for this, but when you wanted a new pair of skates, it took a while. And and that was tough. And now I'm sure they have all things, but the equipment is much lighter now. I've been to I have grandsons that play hockey, and I've been to, when I go see them, I go into the sports shop that's in the arena, and I see the sticks, the equipment, and that it's borderline unrecognizable to me.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so much better. It's so much lighter. And when you see it, you say, "Of course, this is the way it should be." And probably the biggest one, which I think affects the game, is Bernie Perrant had, when you saw how short his pads were, they were felt. And during the game, they get water in them, they get heavier and heavier. They started off heavy, then they got heavier. So the goaltenders are always in a situation of how big a pad it is, because then it's too heavy to move. Now the goaltenders' pads are space age fibers, light, and so the padding is huge, and it's infinitely lighter than before, and it makes it very difficult to go score. I mean, I think of the days when Billy Barber or Reggie Leach are screaming down the wing. Clark gives them a nice pass, and they take a slap shot and score. And those days are pretty much gone, because the goaltenders' equipment is so big. They come out, they cover the angle, and I would like to see the goaltender's equipment smaller, so the guys could actually shoot and not win a game because you got to shoot the puck off of a defenseman's ass into the net.
Right. The day of coming down the Guy Lafleur slap shot and beating somebody from 65 feet is definitely gone. I have an original Titan red stick, a Mike Bossy model from I had from as a kid. Then I have a Mark Messier lockjaw stick, and then I have a Joey Koser '94 New York Ranger Sherwood, and then I have a stick, modern day sticks. And if you weighed them, the NHL stick from the 80s was like legitimately a weapon. Like you talk about cross checks to the back, those things didn't break. You could have killed somebody. Then you get to the Messier original first version of the aluminum, and that thing's got to weigh 5 pounds. I mean, it wasn't a light stick. That thing was insane. They used one shaft all year long. And now you get to these sticks today, at least once a night, you see a guy take a pass and the blade shatters into a million pieces, or he goes to take a slap shot. They weigh like 10 ounces. I couldn't even imagine what you, Barry Beck, or Al Iafrate would do with a stick that's made from today's game. You guys would just forget about it. I mean, 100 miles an hour would be a joke at this point with those sticks, the way you guys used to shoot the puck.
Well, when I played, I felt like a little like Jimmy Connors. He didn't want to make the transition into the new um, graphite tennis rackets, and so I liked the Sherwood laminate sticks, and then I tried to reinforce it with some tape that had some uh, fiberglass in it or whatever. But when I played, eventually I got the routine. I had I had three sticks. One my regular playing stick. I had a stick for the power play, a little stiffer so I could shoot harder, and then I had a Titan stick. Uh, can you hear me?
You're back now.
Okay, we're back. No, so I had three sticks playing pro. One for the regular shift, which I felt I could handle the puck. Another stick, a little stiffer. For power play, I could shoot better. It didn't have, you're not handling the puck as much, or not as many guys on you. And then I had a Titan stick for penalty killing, and you couldn't break that one. And it was good
That
for
was the one
cross
you broke
checking.
over somebody's back.
Well, and it still wouldn't break. It didn't matter, and because a lot of times, you break a stick over someone's back. Number one, it breaks. It doesn't hurt them, and you get a penalty for cross checking. This one didn't break, and it was and I think I might have used the same penalty killing stick, the same one all year. You just couldn't break it. So
Wow,
it's
that's pretty
very
cool.
different than today.
I know we're getting a little deep. I promised you I would keep you a little less today, so I only got two questions left. One, I know you're a big
Okay.
Dolphin fan. We discussed that. Does Behn Wilson collect any memorabilia? Is there anything you kept from the games or from a player that you have put away? Some a Gretzky stick, something a Bobby Clark stick, something like that you kept as a memento.
I have a Russian hockey stick. When junior we played against the Russians, I thought that was cool. And then I have every year. This is the. I feel like I'm the smartest guy in the world when I say this, but every year you get the team picture, and they give the team picture on the bottom. There's like 8 inches of white, so everyone can sign it. And I get it, and everyone's walking around having everyone sign each other's thing. And I said, I don't want to ruin this pictures with everyone's signature. So I went several years and refused to have everyone sign them. So looking back, I wish I did, because at the time, this is going to go on forever. And looking back, that was just a moment in time.
Right.
It can never be recaptured. So, but that's what I have.
Did you keep any of your own jerseys? Do you have a Blackhawk jersey, a Flyer jersey?
You know what? It worked out. I have one Blackhawk jersey, one Flyer jersey, and I have the jersey when I played on the All Star game.
Oh, that's pretty
So
amazing. That's a great keepsake. You should, yeah, that's something you definitely show the grandkids and get a little bit of clout. Like, yeah, that's pretty amazing.
yeah, and then but I haven't had I don't didn't have any of those up just because raising kids, I wanted the focus to be on what my kids were doing. I had my kids' trophies up and things like that. I never put it up, and now we have the three jerseys up, hanging up, and I think that's it.
That's awesome. Ben, what are you doing for Christmas? You have family? What's your holiday plan?
Yeah, I have. Um, I'm remarried, and we're fortunate enough to have some great kids and great grandkids. So it's been busy. We've had my grandson Christian had his birthday about 10 days ago. My son-in-law has birthday. Then I had my birthday. I'm going over to my daughter's and with her grandkids, and my daughters are really over there for Christmas. And then my wife Rita, her kids. One family is coming in just after Christmas for a week, so it'll be family filled. That'll be great.
That's awesome. Ben, I can't thank you enough. I mean, honestly, like I said in the first one, you were probably the intimidator when I was a kid, knowing that my Rangers had to play against Behn Wilson and actually afraid that you were going to hurt one of them. Then getting to watch you in Chicago and just honestly watching your entire career. You're one of the guys that I was old enough to watch, game one against my team and get to see your career finish out. And reading the book, and I'll put it up again. You guys can get this book on Amazon. It's an amazing read. It's lighthearted. It's good. The stories behind the scenes are fantastic. I just really want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending this time with me. I'm not a Chris Nyland. I'm not a Riley Cote. I'm just a normal guy who loves hockey and loves the passion that you guys brought to the game. And thank you so much for doing the show for me. And I wish you nothing but the best. We'll keep in touch. I got something I want to mail down to you. I'll get your address, and I got a little Miami Dolphin something I want to send Behn Wilson for doing the
There
show.
we go.
And you know, thank you so much. And Ben, Merry Christmas to you and your family. And I can't say thank you enough to you.
Well, first of all, I want to say thanks for having me. If you've got time, have me back again, because this is fun going back through these memories. And I also think it's nice what you and Scoop are doing, which is bringing a lot of these stories to the forefront that people don't have exposure to. I think it's cool, and I'm going to start listening in.
Oh, awesome. Hey, we're going to do something this afternoon. Maybe you can take a listen to us. Kent Carlson, Dwight Schofield, and Scoop and I are going to get together, and we're going to do a weekly show and talk about the 70s and 80s and 90s style of hockey and get some guys on and do some interviews. So we're going to try to do more of this. And basically, the idea of the show came out of doing your part one. So thank you for that.
Huh. Well, first of all, say hi to Kent, and I played with Dwight, so say hi to him for me. He was a great guy.
I will, 100%. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to let Ben go because I could talk all day to this guy. But everybody out there, have a safe holiday season. And Ben, thank you so much. If you could just hang 1 second once I stop this, and I can ask you one last question off the air. So everybody,
Okay.
HWO signing off.